screen.
I'm glad I went to Repair Room USA.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is Richard, Repair Room USA. Sorry it's been a little bit since I made a video, but I've been very busy with my other job, which is property management. I have 2 houses that are up for rent and things get hectic.
I'm glad I went to Repair Room USA, even in the dark ages.
So today we have a competition of 2 different devices that are used for micro soldering, which are the hot tweezers. On the right, I have the Hakko FX-8804, and that works with the FX-8804X. That's this station right here. And I also have the Pace ADS200, and these are the tweezers that come with it. These also come with a base that gives you different tips that you can use. They come in handy. They come in with this little holder right here that you can put them on, and the tweezers fit just like this in there. So the Hakko, they just come with a regular base like this that they just basically fit in here. There is no automatic turn off. They stay on until you actually turn it off from the base. The same thing with the regular soldering iron for this one as well. That's one of the things I don't like about this one, is that it doesn't have the automatic turn off. The Pace does. There's quite a few things I don't like about this one. My recommendation is avoid this machine altogether unless you're using it for very simple tasks, because I have not liked it at all and it's super expensive. The tweezers by itself, they're almost like $300 and they're not worth it. On these right here for the Hakko, the tips are actually screwed off and they come with this ceramic part that gets hot, and then these are the tips that go on it. We're gonna start with the tips that come with this unit. I had to buy these separately and they were very expensive, and I found out they're not that good at all. So let's start with the ones that actually come with it originally. Put these right here, this right here, and we're gonna screw these on. And then that's how they pretty much work. So you would go on your motherboard, and I'm going to use this at first to remove parts, and then on the Hakko side, on the Pace side, we are going to use something similar. We're going to use these tips right here. And these come with the Pace ones. Now these aren't for any micro work. We're just going to be working on a motherboard. The reason I'm working on the motherboard is so that we can work on something that has a high distribution of heat. These boards are very thick, so it's very hard to remove components off of them. So let's start with these. We're going to be working on these right here, and we're going to see how well these are good for removing. We're going to be turning the Hakko on, and you're going to be seeing how long it turns to get hot. I have it set at 360. It's up to 100. It's up to 130. And you can see how long this is taking to actually get hot right here. And this is its little base. They're actually smoking right now. $260. Almost at 300. There we go. So it should be pretty much hot enough now till we can actually take off one of these small little capacitors. And nothing. Let's try to use a little bit of flux on here. Maybe that will help it come off a little easier. There we go, removed. That is one removed. You can see how bulky this is though. It's very hard for you to get into certain places. Like right here, I was just melting that plastic right there just to get in here. So let's try to put you back. Like that. Okay. All right. Now, let's turn this off. And now let's try the pace. We're going to turn it on. Very similar. Let's see how fast the pace actually gets hot. A lot quicker. And it actually is jumping. Let's set it at 360 like the other one. Okay. And now let's try to take off one of these components. Oh. No, that wasn't working. Let's try to adjust a little bit the angle here. There, a little bit better on the angle. Let's add a little bit more flux. There. There we go. Removed. Now let's see if we can put you back. It looks like it fused to this other one right here. That's what it actually did. So it's kind of bulky, you know, and for work like this, when you're taking off single components, it's not so bad. They both work for something like that, but if you look at there, we have a lot of room. There's a lot of room to work with right here. But when you put it back in its base, like this, I put it back in its base, and usually after a little while, once you put it back in its base, it's supposed to turn off. It's making me look bad. It usually turns off. These are the little things that we're supposed to use for the paste iron to be able to switch the irons out once they're hot. So we are going to put on some of the micro connectors that we have, and we're going to switch over. Now with the paste, I actually have a few different tips that I want to show you guys. Now the different tips that I have are these. The first ones that actually came with the unit are these right here. Now if you look at these though, these tips, they're not the straightest, but I did get these tips used. Now these I actually bought, and they're like $100 and something. These tips right here, you would think, oh wow, these look great. I wish they would close in like that. It would be better. But they're more like this. And then we have these tips right here. These are probably the better ones that I have. So let's put the best ones that I have on for now and see how they close. See, it looks like the way they close, it's not even straight. And even if you were to switch these, it's like they're crooked. There, that's as straight as I'm gonna get them. If you take these apart, they do have a adjustment in here so you can tighten these. These are what makes the actual lever turn like that. Let's get in and let's do a smaller component this time. Something that's a little harder to reach, right in there. We're still keeping it at 360, which is our normal temp. And let's see if we can get into one of these little tiny components right here. Hard to get into because I got this component right there. I don't want to mess anything up. Let's try turning the board, make it easier for us. Okay, right there. And let's see if we can get to this little component. Now these boards are very thick. So let's add some flux. And for reference, if you want to see how this is a SIM card, to see how big that component is right next to it, that's a SIM card. So you can see how tiny these little components are. And pretty much got it off. There it is. Is that it right there? There's the component. Put this back in its base. Let's look at it. There you go. That's the component right there. There it is. All right. Turn up the light. And you can see it's not damaged. It's a little bit damaged right there on the side. That's what happens to these components sometimes when you pull them off, is they get damaged. There. Now let's use, it's on standby right now too. So it lowered the temperature. It's on standby. As soon as I remove it, temperature goes right back up. Super fast. Boom. All right. Now let's use the Hakko. Turn it back on. Actually, turn this back off. Let's switch out these and put on the micro ones that I bought. Put on this side. All right. Now the problem with these though is they're so wide that when you're trying to get into like tight spaces, you have to have a lot of room on each side to be able to get it. And if they don't line up perfectly straight, then what's the point of having these two little tips? It's so hard to get in here. But let's try it anyways. Let's see if this on 360 will get hot enough. It's at 100. And spoiler alert, basically both these components are terrible for any kind of micro soldering that you're going to do. And that's what I'm trying to like get a point across. They're good for taking off big basic components when you have a lot of room, but when you're working with really micro small parts, unless you have a lot of room, you know, it's not going to do anything. All right, we're at 338, 340, 350, 360. Okay. Same temperature as the paste. Try to get in here. Okay, I don't think it's coming off. Let's try to zoom in here a little bit. It looks like it's getting hotter up here than the bottom than on the top. You see how it's melting the bottom but not the top? So let's add some more flux. All right, that's not coming off. Let's try to turn it up to 380. There we go. Now let's try it. It's moving. Seems like it's melting. It's not quite melting that, and it actually ripped the component off the board. So there's actually a component left on here. I would have to get my soldering gun and try to pull it off of there. There, I got the little piece. All right, let's try to remove a different component. Let's see if we can get in between here to remove these. If I can turn my board just a little bit, I want to see if I can remove these. Use a little flux. I'm still at 380. There you go. Let's see how well you did. There we go. Take it off. Put it back on. Take this one off. Now it's always harder. Whatever side that you know that it's not melting as quick is because it's the ground plane. The ground plane is connected to the whole other components. Now this one is unfortunately getting so close that it's touching this plastic component right here. And like that's not gonna work. I wish these things were straight. If these bars were like perfectly straight and not this wide, then this might actually be better. So for anything, now if you're working on stuff that's even smaller, for example, like a motherboard, something like this, what are you going to be able to do with this? You might be able to take some component like this off, you know, but if you want to get into like these little guys in here, you're not taking those off with this. That is not coming off. You know, maybe for that, no. And these are the smallest ones that I could find for this soldering iron. So for this soldering iron, for doing bulky things, and if you're going to be using the regular paddles that came with it, then yeah, I think that'll be a good option. But for anything else, I don't think it's going to be a good option. Let's try to turn this thing up to 400. Let's see how it does there. Let's find some more components that we can remove. On something like this, we have this in the way. It can't get in there to be able to take that off. I can't get in there. You know, this is a motherboard with lots of room. Even with something like this right next to that connector, I can't get in there without touching this connector. There's no way that I can actually do stuff like this. Let's see what else. Something with a lot of open space, something like this. Yeah, it's possible, not a problem. Let's try to take that component off and see what happens. right here. These, I'm kind of away from that, but see how wide this thing is? And there's a lot of room between there. On this, there's a lot of room in here. Between these connectors and over here, you have like a quarter of my tweezers. But this is so big like this, I can't really get in unless maybe I do some kind of like little trickery with these angles and get in like that. That's what I don't like about these tweezers. This station doesn't automatically turn off, and it's just terrible. So these are horrible. I wish I never would have bought them. And they do make a little micro tweezers for Hakko, but you have to have a different base. It doesn't work with this base. Why? Why doesn't it work with that base? It doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to put this guy to the side for now. Now we're going to be using some of the paste, and we're going to be putting on these tips that I have right here. And we're going to see if these tips are actually okay for using in conjunction with a iPhone motherboard, which is most of the work, and it's what really interests me. They had a good solid iron that could work with taking small little motherboard components. Now on this one, it's more doable, but if you look at my tips, like they seem like they're not, like I have to turn this one's in a little bit right there. Maybe that'll be better. And on a motherboard like this, a lot of times you have to remove tiny little components that are next to like this. So say I was going in here. All right, here we go. Let's see. A little component like this, can I get in here? Yeah, I can kind of get in there. Can I take that off? I don't know. I don't think it's hot enough to get at. Let's turn it up. Let's turn it up to 380. Let's put in a little bit of lubrication in there. And let's see if this is removable. Luckily, there's some room in between these components right here. Let's see. Let's try to clean this off a little bit. There we go. Removed. Okay. Now that little component is the size of a gnat's fucking ass. How does this look in here? Let's see. This is on standby. The actual tweezers are in its holder right there. There is my part. All right. Now this one, because it had a lot of room. Now, will it work for me to make puffy little pillows? Let's find out. Alright, let's see if I can make some puffy little pillows right there. And get some flux. I need to put a little bit of flux on the tips. Let's see if that worked. Looks like alright, I was able to get some stuff on there. What is on the end of this? Nothing. I thought the little component was there. Guess I was wrong. So on something like that it worked, but there's a lot of room in there. Let's try something a little bit more crowded. What about that one? Could I take a component like one of these off of there? So let's angle it so where I make it comfortable. I'm going to shoot for this component right there. See, with these tweezers, I can get to them like that. Let's see if I can focus this in a little bit. There we go. Now let's see if I can actually here. Let's see if I can actually get in there with these micro tweezers. Now remember, I don't have a component over here on this side. Let's clean these tips off. That worked. Let's put it back. Now just for fun, I want to see if I can stick it back on this right here. So on something like this, and you're working on something this small, the only way you're getting that back on there is with hot air. Can you use tweezers? Yes. Can you use these tweezers? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to be best thing to do. Is make sure that there's a little bit of puffy pillows on these. Align this as best you can right here. And use hot air. Now, will that work? I don't know if it'll work with the tweezers. Now I can set these tweezers for a lot smaller, almost even touching like that, and then I can get in here, I can hold this down. I can't really get into it from above, I'm about to go high. I thought I had it. See, that's not gonna work. For taking stuff off, yes. For removing stuff, putting it back on, unless you have a lot of room to work with, that's really not going to work on that. I can try to see if I can make some better pads on here for it to connect to. The only way I'm going to do that is with a fine tip soldering iron. Maybe get in here and get these tips. There, get a little bit of solder on my tip, make sure it's nice and clean, and just want a tiny little bit of solder on the tip like that. There we go, nice fat puffy pillows. And get the component. And what I would normally do is I would just get hot air and stick it on here. But we're going to see if this is, you're able to do it with hot tweezers. And the reason I'm coming at it from this angle is because I don't want to touch this connector. If I was coming at the connector with hot tweezers on this side, I could easily hold this component with the tweezers down, but I would have a better chance of melting this connector. So I have to, since there's a bump there, I have to kind of angle the tweezers up to be able to hold it in place and hold it down while I use the hot tweezers. The good thing about these is they got hot really quick. You're already at 380, and I can grab it out of here. All right, that's the best I'm gonna get it. I use hot air. Let's try to just use hot air. Come at this way. Component is pretty much in place. We're gonna have to sneak up with it in hot air, warm the area up. Until everything starts bubbling and melting. And the component should automatically just stick on to place. It looks like it's a little bit down. I need to push it up a little bit. The airspeed's too low. I am at 330, 40, and then I'm turning it up. There. Component is in place. So, in conclusion, what do I think about these tweezers? Well, using the Hakko micro tweezers, the FX100, I think they're called, the little mini tweezers that they make with Hakko, those are actually a lot better. The problem is they won't work with this base. You have to buy like a $600 base to actually be able to use them, and I am not, you know, with all that. The pace, they're a lot better. They heat up a lot faster. Now, are they still bulky? Yes. Are the tips very expensive? Yes. Do they offer a lot of different tips? They do. But it doesn't mean that the tips are, you know, not that much better or great. These tips right here, let me show you some of the tips that I got. These tips right here these were I like them because they have a lot of thermal mass that you have right here, but the angle that they go in, it's still very tip oriented. And if you look at these, it looks like that tip is so much different from this tip. Like, look how much longer this one is at the end here than the other one. Does that make any sense? If you look at these, this is my other one. These tips are about the same on the length. If you see the little difference right here, then these, it looks like the length is different. They don't look like they're the same. I don't know, and I bought these brand new. See that? Why is that? I have no idea why that is. See, if you look at their numbers, they're the same exact number on this one. So these are the 1014, those are the 1013s. So why did that come with this? These are much thinner on the tip, but I got these used right here, and not even the tips are very straight. Now, can I probably straighten these up a little bit? Maybe. These tips, the way that they're designed, is that they actually touch at the tip instead of having like a system where they touched with these two parallel like that. I think it would be better, but they don't do that. So for all that money that you pay for these tips, you know, it's a lot of money. And that's how these kind of fit. Now, can I turn these? Yes, I can turn them, and I can turn these. But that's as far as I can turn these in, like that, and these can go out like this, but it doesn't make any sense. Maybe like that a little bit. And if you look at the tips on these, it looks like it's the same thing. These look longer from here to here than these from here to here. You see that? It looks like it might be like these broke. Remember, I got these tips for free when I went to the Expo convention. So these are probably just broke, and that's why they came. That's why I bought these other two tips. But these other two tips are like very expensive. They're over $100 each. And that is just like these, the tips look perfect. These, the tips don't look perfect. It looks like one is way bigger than the other one. Why is that? I don't know. I don't know what that is. If they were to line up a different way, you know, it's kind of like they're like, there's no way to line them up. Only thing you can do is turn the tips in and out like that. That's it. And these the same thing. You can turn them in and out like that. and maybe do it this way. Get ones like that. But I just wish that they would just make them straight. Make them perfectly straight and these parts lay flat on each other. That would have been better. So can I recommend any of these? No. Can I recommend the Pace over the Hakko? Yes, but by a very thin margin. Can I recommend the Hakkos? Definitely not. Terrible idea. Can I recommend the Pace? They're a little bit better, a little bit more functional, but just I don't like any of them. And I spent a lot of money on these Pace ones thinking that they were going to be the cream of the crop, and they're not. And unfortunately, the Hakko with this base, these are the only ones that you can get, unless I'm willing to spend another $600 for a different base and get that. If Pace made some straight tweezers available, then that would have been a much better option. But they don't. They make these, and they only work for this base. So unfortunately, I hope I opened your eyes a little bit to some of the options that there is out there. I am still searching for a good pair of tweezers with the stuff that I already have, and hopefully I can resolve that. Do I really need tweezers? No, not really. Would I like to have some good ones? Yes, I would, but unfortunately that's not the case now. Hope you guys learned something. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next video.
I should have gone to Repair Room USA.